everyone. In Nazir page 52, we hear a side comment about a doctor, actually many doctors, Todos the doctor and other doctors, who are helping Chazal, who are helping the Chachamim decide how many bodies lay in a box according to the number of bones in the box. So let me share the page and see what we have from that, what we can learn from that little comment. And the topic that I want to dwell on today is dealing with the question of medicine and doctors. Are we to use doctors and medicine? And the little quote in Nazir page 52 that and an incident occurred which they brought a box that was full of bones to the synagogue of blacksmith, and they placed it in an open air space, not under the roof, so that it won't be impure, impart ritual impurity. And then Tadas, the doctor, entered, and all the other doctors entered with him. And they said, after examining the pile, there is not a full spine from one corpse here, and maybe there is some people, it's not from one person, maybe it's more than one person. Now, it's just an about a side quote sentence telling us about a doctor. And we do know about this Tadas the doctor. Tadas the doctor was a Jewish doctor in the second century, working in the time after the destruction of the temple, at the second and third generation of Tanaim. He learned medicine in Alexandria. Then he moved into Lod and was working there. And he appears in the Talmud in different places where Chachamim are actually are insulting with him, whether in terms of health and how to deal with certain medical issues. So we can understand from that Chazal viewed him as an expert, as someone that definitely is worth listening to, and he knows things that they don't know, as part of the example we brought today from the Nazir, that they couldn't tell from the bones of how many people are these bones are telling them. So in order to understand more how the Torah is viewing the question of doctors and medicines and how Chazal viewed it, we're going to touch today just a little bit. I mean, it's just the beginning of the discussion that is a long time discussion, starting from the Torah. It's going all the way till today in terms of how should we regard medicine and doctors. Shall we just rely on God and pray, or shall we use, or definitely use, doctors and medicine? And I'm starting from the phrase, from the verse in Exodus, that is a famous pasuk telling us that Im Shema Tishma Lekol Hashem, if thou will diligently heard the voice of the Lord God, and do that which is the right in his eyes, and will give ear to his commandments and keep all of his status, I will put none of the disease upon you which I have put upon Egyptians, for I am the Lord that heals you. Okay, and if you can look at the Hebrew, if you'd better, כל המחלה אשר שמתי במצרים לא אשים עליך כי אני השם רופאך. I am your doctor. So God is telling us two things, I believe. One is that if we listen to God and listen to his words and follow his ways, all the illness and the diseases that he put upon Mitzrayim are not going to be upon us, the people of Israel, because he is our doctor. But that also means that he is the source of the illnesses, and that's why he can also be the ultimate doctor. Ani Hashem rofecha. Okay, so that is a promise that the Torah is telling us. And another verse that is strengthening that point of view is also from Exodus, telling us, and you shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will take sickness away from the midst of you. In other words, here the pasuk, here's the Torah understands that the illness usually comes through what we eat and what we drink. But if we will worship and serve God well, then he will take away the sickness from, from the midst of us. So there's a very clear connection between following the words of God and being his servants in the right way and not being ill. But we know from life that it's not that simple, and people do get ill and people do get sick. And the question of the sickness and what should a person do bothered Chazal, and we hear different voices. And again, as I said, we're going to touch just a little bit, just the edge of this really vast dispute and interesting different points of view regarding this topic. And I brought a Gemara from Berachot that we've learned many long ago. And there, the Gemara in Berachot is saying that on going in to be bloodlet, one should say, "May it be your will, O Lord my God, that this operation may be a cure for me, and may you heal me, for you are the faithful healing God, and your healing is certain, since it's not the way of men to heal, but this is a habit with them." Okay, this is a quote from Rav Acha, and Rav Acha is saying, whenever he's going to a procedure of drawing blood, it was a procedure done in the ancient world in order to revive a sick person or someone who fainted. And he says, I know I'm going to this procedure done by a person. I definitely understand that God is the ultimate doctor. God is responsible here. And this person who's taking my blood is a servant of God. He's just may God bless him to do a good job. But I understand that God is the ultimate doctor, and the healing is up to him. And we just do process because this is what we do, because it's a habit that we try to help ourselves. But and we can also see here Rashi is saying, since it's saying about the words, since it is not the way of men to heal, but this is a habit, says Rashi, meaning they should not get involved in healing, but rather pray for mercy from God. But what can we do? We usually go and have all kinds of procedures and take all kinds of medicines in order to help ourselves. But this is not the end of the Gemara. And the other part of the Gemara is a totally opposite opinion by Abaye, an Amorav Bavel, that is quoting a Rabbi Ishmael, a Tana, one of the main Tanaim in Eretz Israel, the friend, the opposite and friend of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Ishmael is a rationalist. Rabbi Ishmael is looking at reality, and he understands reality with his sechel. That's also how with his brain. That's how he learned Torah. And Abaye is quoting Rabbi Ishmael, who is saying, a man should not speak thus, like we heard about Rav Acha saying, I know God is the doctor and not this person. Since it was taught in the school of Rabbi Ishmael through the verse in Shemot, he shall cause him to be thoroughly healed. And he's referring to a pasuk in Sefer Shemot, saying, if that victim, two people fought, and then if the victim then gets up and walks outdoors upon the staff, the assailant shall go unpunished, except for paying for the idleness and the cure. From this we learn, says Rabbi Ishmael, that permission has been given to the physicians to heal. And this is a very famous quote that is being quoted throughout generations. That Rabbi Ishmael is saying, the Torah, God is telling us that we can use doctors to heal ourselves. Physicians are there, from the wisdom of God. There are people with wisdom who learned how to help people. And they have permission from God, not from their school, not from their diploma, but from God. They learned they can heal people. And This echoes also in a different Gemara in Sanhedrin, telling us a very interesting thing, saying, and it was taught, any city that does not have in it these 10 things, a sage may not live within it. And there are a list of different things. One of them is a doctor. I give you an you know, on this list, there's also, it should have a bathroom, it should have a washroom, it should have a shul, of course, it should have a shochet, it should have a scribe, and other things, and of course a court, and a doctor. The Gemara recites that we have to have a doctor in a city, and if there's no doctor in the city, a sage should not live there. In other words, it's important because there's someone there who can help you physically if you get ill. That is opposite. The opposite of this we hear in another famous quote in Kiddushim, saying that the best of doctors go to hell. Okay, I'm not going to dwell on this quote. Of course, it's more complex than just saying, oh, doctors are bad, but just to give you a feeling of how this is not so clear in the Gemara. But what I want to share more with you is another dispute regarding doctors between, two giant Jewish doctors in the Middle Ages, the Ramban and the Rambam. And I start with the Ramban, even though he's later to the Rambam. But I start from the Ramban, who was a doctor, and he was also a mystic, and a giant in Torah in Spain. And the Ramban on Leviticus, on the pasuk that says, "I will establish my abode in your midst, and I will not spurn you," says the Ramban, "and I will establish my abode in your midst," says the Ramban Maimonides, the rule is that when the Jewish people are in a state of spiritual perfection, neither their physical bodies nor their country nor any of their other affairs are governed by nature at all. This applies to the nation as a whole and to each individual Jew, for God will bless their bread and their water and remove illness from their midst. Yeah, the sources of illness, bread and water, will be blessed by God, and then he'll remove illness from our midst. They will have no need of doctors, nor they'll have to follow medical procedures, even as precautionary measures. For I, God, am your healer. It's very, very clear, says the Ramban. When we do good, God promised us nothing bad will happen to us. We will not need to use doctors. But he says, of course, he knows the reality. We are not perfect, and there are doctors around us. And he says, what place do doctors have in the house of those who carry out the will of God, after he promised that he will bless their bread and water and remove illness from their midst? The only function of the medical profession should be to give nutritional advice, what to eat and drink and what to avoid, not to heal, but to give an advice about nutritional elements that can cause us damage, and we should avoid from them. This is very clear. But the other clear voice that we hear is of the other great doctor in the Middle Ages, and that's the Rambam, Maimonides. And the Rambam in Hilchot Deot, and I brought this specifically from his book of law. It's for him, it's a mitzvah. And the Rambam says, since maintaining a healthy and sound body is amongst the ways of God, for one cannot understand or have any knowledge of the Creator if he is ill. Therefore, he must avoid that which harms the body and accustom himself to that which is healthful, and helps the body become stronger. The Rambam is also very clear, and he says, God created us healthy. in a healthy body. He did that so we can, we can understand the way of God. We can worship God, and we can dwell about understanding God and God's words through a healthy soul and body. And it's a mitzvah for us to maintain a healthy body and a healthy life. And if we get sick, says the Rambam, it's because of us. And he's talking about any people. That's how God created human beings. And it's up to us to maintain a healthy body and to avoid those things that harm us and harm our health. When that happens, well, we'll have to use a doctor, and there are doctors, and the Rambam respected doctors, not only Jewish doctors, but doctors who were before him, all the way back to the Greek, to Greek medicine, of course, and Arab medicine during his time, and the Rambam himself added so much to the knowledge of medicine. He wrote 11 medicine books that we usually don't hear about. They're all in Arabic. Some were translated to Hebrew, to other languages. And he is emphasizing healthy life, but healthy life in the holistic way, like we know it today. Not only a healthy body, but also a healthy soul. We should also take care of how we behave, because if we get angry, we can get sick. And the famous quotes about the Rambam telling there's a list of things we should eat and things we should avoid, how long we should sleep. Sleep today is the most enforced element of everybody, all doctors saying that that's the number one healthy act we should adopt. Have a decent night's sleep of long enough hours. The Rambam said it already at the 12th century. So he's saying, and his understanding of health is, don't be angry, don't eat too much, and move. In other words, do sports, move your body, and that together will assure you to have a healthy life. Now, of course, he understands that some people were born with illnesses, but he's saying in other ways, things that we can do about our health, we should do, and it's a mitzvah so we can understand God. And I just brought to you a very nice quote from an Arab poet lived in his time. When the Rambam moved to Egypt, he became the doctor of Salah ad-Din, the great sultan living there then. And he was known around the area. And Al-Said ibn Sina al-Malik, an Arab poet, said about him, Galenos healed the body. Galenos was a Greek doctor living in the 2nd century. He was the doctor of the Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher, the philosopher emperor of Greek, of Rome. And he was a famous doctor that, doctors throughout the generations and deep into the Middle Ages learned his medicine. And Al-Malik is saying, Galenos healed the body, but Maimonides healed body and soul. His knowledge placed him as the number one doctor of his generation. He knew also how to heal ignorance. So these are beautiful, praising words of an Arab figure in the time of the Rambam, acknowledging Rambam as a doctor. And what do we do, with this interesting conversation throughout the generation about medicine? I think the Rambam and the Ramban will tell us to use our minds, and definitely not to lose taking care of ourselves. And I think the fact that both of them were doctors, and also in the Gemara we have different mentioning of other doctors, not only Todos. We have the doctor who healed Rebbe, and we have Rabbi Chanina, who is known as a medicine person, and we know Rav Ami, who was also known as a doctor. Doctors were there, and obviously we always have to both use doctors and medicine and pray to God, because ultimately, God is the doctor, Hashem Rofecha.